MIT were identified. They came to us, and we have an agreement with Singapore. And we have now, particularly in engineering, a number of exchanges and contractual relationships that I feel are both bringing resources to our campus, but also helping to meet their national needs. I think that's an interesting model because it's a nation, a small nation, that looked at its circumstances and said, what can we do to create a future for our citizens? And they very quickly turned to the educational system, the research enterprise, as a way of doing that. About 3 weeks ago, I was in Taiwan at a conference of university leaders from around the world focused on information technology. As you know, our campus has had an enormous role in creating that whole industry globally. And 13 of us were asked to meet with the president of Taiwan, which we did, for about 45 minutes. And the question he repeatedly asked of us is, how are your institutions, your universities through research and education, contributing to economic development in your countries and in your states? I think we need to ask ourselves that. It's a sobering question because it suggests that we do have an obligation to the state, we do have an obligation to the nation, to give some thought to how our efforts here can contribute to economic growth. I thought a lot about that on the flight back across the Pacific. How do I engage and how does President Hogan engage with state leaders to have those kinds of conversations? I think we can do it. And I think there will be some areas. I'm particularly excited about medicine. I know Dr. Hogan has talked about a new position that's Vice President for Health Care, or Health. And if you think about what's the President Obama's initiative around health, the national changes that are occurring, and the opportunities particularly for some of the technologies that we have on this campus, genomics, personalized medicine, understanding one's genome and how you respond to therapies, predicting possible problems that you might have, and the role that computational science plays in interpreting that kind of information and helping come to solutions. We have a role. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the Silicon Valley of health were to occur in Illinois? And if the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign was a significant participant in helping that to occur? Think of the number of jobs that it might create in this state. Think of the opportunities that would then create for our citizens to have employment, for their children to have the benefits of quality schools because of local tax resources being available, and at the end of the day, the state to address some of its budget problems because of increased revenue, because of increased economic activity. I think those are some of the things that we're obligated to think about as we think more broadly about our historic mission as a land-grant university. I think I'll stop. Perhaps there are questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll start our questions.
So my name is Daina Cueva Alegria. Is this on? Okay, I can't hear myself. I am a member of the GEO, and I have a question for you regarding the price tag of education. Recently, the administration has threatened to take away or reduce tuition waivers for graduate students, especially from those of the humanities. At the same time, administrator salaries have increased, as well as the perks that go with that. And as tuition waivers decrease, so do opportunities to receive a graduate education. At this rate, only those who can afford to pay out of pocket for a graduate education will have access to the university's doctoral, professional, and master's programs. Eliminating and reducing tuition waivers for graduate students coupled with cutting back teaching jobs goes against the mission of a land-grant university. So I think everyone should have access to the opportunity for a graduate education, not just the rich. Is this the price tag of education? And shouldn't we be cutting from the top, that is from administrative salaries, instead of from the bottom, if we really and truly believe that we should prioritize education for society, for the well-being of society, and for the economy as well?
You asked some very, very profound questions, and I seem to recall that my salary was reduced 10% by the furlough program this last year, so maybe I could benefit from a bit of an increase somewhere. The question of waivers for students was part of the negotiations with your union, and we're observing, I think, fully the provisions of our agreement. The different units on campus have needs for students, for their graduate programs as they grow or shrink, dependent upon the unit's perception of the need to prepare individuals with graduate degrees and their need for teaching support. So I would want always to be sure that any of those decisions that were made in accordance with the agreements that we have with those individuals that we negotiated contracts with.
You probably have closer access to the new president than most of us. What about his agenda, experience, and initiatives are you most excited about?
I think I was particularly excited, and I'm still excited, that we brought onto our campus in our university an individual who comes from the tradition of land-grant universities, with the exception of the bit of time that he spent at Iowa. Most of his career has been spent at universities that are culturally and, in a sense, socially aligned with the long-term history of the University of Illinois. So I think he brings with him a background that would, I believe, help him fully understand what our role is and so forth. He's a man who has a good sense of direction. He's also an individual who understands the role of faculty in governance and in decisions. He's made proposals relative to administrative and restructuring, and I was heartened that one of the first things that he's now done is turn to the faculty governance process, the faculty senate, and said, "What do you think?" And that process is now underway. I think that's a good indication of his understanding of the way a university functions. I'm enjoying working with Dr. Hogan. We do spend time together. I wish more of it were social. In a sense, we spend quite a lot of time dealing with very, very difficult subjects, and just not a lot of time for if you will, banter and just engaging in light conversation. He's dealing with very, very difficult issues. I appreciate the Board of Trustees that we have as well, and the extent to which they